Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk to you about stoicism and how I got into it and how it helped me through the most difficult time in my life and subsequently helped my family. So going back now just over a couple of years, my wife's pregnant. She's about 4 or 5 months pregnant, and I start researching and delving into stoicism. Start reading about it, some of the great Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, etc., reading their works and really delving deep into it and trying to apply it into my life. And I realized as well that I'd already been doing that. I'd already been applying a lot of the concepts and the practices of Stoicism to my life leading up to that without knowing it was Stoicism. So it's probably one of the reasons why it really appealed to me. But it was definitely, it's been going through a resurgence in modern culture the last few years. And it's an antidote to a lot of the chaos out there today. So much of the world seems chaotic and crazy out there, and people are, it's left versus right, it's the unvax versus the vax, etc. And Stoicism can definitely center you and keep you calm. It's a great tool, and so I started learning about it back then when my wife was pregnant. Anyway, fast forward, she gives birth and we come home after the first 2-3 days. Things are going okay, and then my son has some problems waking up and some feeding, and he seems to be losing weight. And one day we struggled to really wake him up, and this gets me at this point, so I get really visibly upset about that, and this makes my wife panic. Up until then she'd been very calm, but this made my wife panic, and anyway we went into panic mode and we rushed him off to the hospital. Turns out nothing serious, he just had jaundice, very, very common for newborn babies, but he was okay, he was fine. We went home the following night, just had to give him plenty of sunlight. But talking to my wife about it, she told me that me becoming so emotional and panicking about it set her off. And I realized, and going back into my readings of Stoicism, that I can't be doing that. I can't be doing that. I have to be here. I should have been more stoic in that moment. I should have been more calm, rational. And even if we did end up going to the hospital, if I stayed calm and just and rational and didn't get emotional and just said, okay, listen, we're going to take him to the hospital, I think she would have been in a better headspace herself. Anyway, this led to a bunch of other issues a few weeks later. So trying to cut a long story short here, my son had, he was born with not a fully formed jaw. So his jaw was not fully formed, it was all the way back. This created some feeding problems in him. Okay, so he couldn't breastfeed properly. So he had to have a nipple guard, a plastic nipple guard applied. Anyway, so cut long story short, he was still having problems with this, and he was losing weight, and he was getting sick, and we were getting incredibly worried. Every time we would put him on the boob, he'd be screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And sometimes it would take him up to an hour until he would calm down and actually feed. And we didn't know what was going on. Anyway, cut long story short, a few more things happen. We have to rush him off to the doctor. And the doctor finds that there's a huge wound, open wound at the back of his throat. And so what's happened, that plastic nipple guard, because of his short jaw, just constantly him trying to feed, it just create this huge open wound, and he was in absolute agony. It's why he couldn't feed, it's why he was screaming all the time, it's why he was getting sick, it's why, he wouldn't take to the boob for a long time. And anyway, we had to rush him off to hospital. And so we were in hospital for a good few days, trying to get him to feed, trying to heal this wound, and fix some other things. And all this time while I was going on, I learnt my lesson from the previous couple of weeks before. I remembered my research into stoicism, and I stayed very calm. I stayed very stoic in this moment. And it was a huge, huge help, especially to my wife. My wife, she really, really struggled in that time. She really, really struggled. I'll give her all credit. She powered on through with the breastfeeding. She was determined to get our son breastfeeding, and at the time it didn't seem to make much sense at the time. We had to compromise a little bit with a little bit of formula, but she was mentally tough in the sense that she wanted to keep trying to breastfeed, which was great, and it paid off in the long run. But around that and the stress and the worry, she was really breaking down. And I know that she needed me as her husband, as the father, to be strong, to be stable. And that's what I was for a large part of it. I was very, very stoic, very calm, rational, positive. I never broke down in front of her during this period of him getting sick, being rushed to the hospital, coming back. Stayed very, very calm. And this definitely helped her. She came out, she said, I was definitely a rock in those moments. And it didn't end there, guys. We went through a very, very difficult next 2 to 3 months. Again, the feeding was a big problem. My wife went into, a bad case of postnatal depression. And again, but for 90% of the time, I made sure I made a huge, huge effort to keep that stoic mindset, that philosophy, that attitude. And at times, it wasn't always the case. At times too much was too much, right? Sometimes I got pissed off, sometimes I had enough, and I just said to my wife, look, I cannot help you right now. I can't deal with you anymore. I'm at my end, my energy's in, or I might break down, get a little bit emotional. But I would say 90% of the time, I was a rock. And it's what my family needed, massively. If I just went into a huge mess, emotional mess, and I was a wreck as much as she was, I don't know how we would have made it through, how we would have got through our relationship. We would have been at each other's throats all the time. That wouldn't have been good for the baby, wouldn't have been good for her, trying to feed the baby, etc. Just would have been a giant mess. And I truly believe that the teachings that I applied from Stoicism really, really helped my family and got us through the really, really tough times. Because those first 3 months, I would say 3 to 4 months of my son being born, was the most difficult time of my life. It felt like there was no end in sight. Every waking minute was torture. He was in pain, he was hungry, screaming, he wasn't sleeping. My wife was an absolute mess and depressed, and I still had to deal with all that, go to work, come home, deal with it. It was an incredibly difficult period of my life, but it got me through it. I was able to get through with that mindset. Modern culture now in the West, you hear quotes like, you should always express your emotions. And I think that's bollocks. Always express your emotions. I think when you learn, I think emotions need to be controlled in a lot of cases. It's more so as a man, especially when you're a father and you want to be a leader of your own family. Learning when to express the emotions and when to control them. And the more you try to control, the more you try to get them under control, not suppressing, this is not a suppression of emotions, but controlling of the emotions, and doing what needs to be done. And maybe later on down the line you can release that stress and talk about it. But in that moment, being strong, being stoic, being calm, keeping a level head, being positive for you and everyone around you, I think that's a better approach, especially as a man. I think that's a healthier approach as well. A much healthier approach. I know the research out there, yes, when you're going through a bad time, talking about it can help. Sorry guys, just had to change the video over there. So as I was saying, You know, the research is clear. You know, when you're going through a difficult time, talking about your emotions can help. I know that very well. My wife's a psychologist. But when you practice controlling emotions, especially as a man, when you practice that, what you get good at is understanding when to express those emotions, when's a good time to do that, and when is a good time to keep it in, keep it all together, remain stoic, remain calm, and do what needs to be done. If you're just always of this cultural opinion, it's a very popular cultural opinion that you should always express your emotions, well, you just end up like a child. That's what a child does. A child just expresses all their emotions all the time. You don't get good at controlling yourself when you need to. You know, there's sometimes where I've been weak, let's say, and I've expressed my emotions and I felt I should have stayed calm, and that's felt worse to me. That's eaten me up more than the temporary feel-good, you know, feelings that I get from expressing it. I feel much better in myself if I overcome it, and maybe I can talk about it or maybe express it further down the line when the moment's passed a little bit. So this idea you should always express your emotions and always talk about your problems, etc., I don't believe that to be very true at all. I think we should go back to, we're becoming too emotional, especially men in the West now, becoming a little bit too emotional. You know, it's a feminization of men that's been going on for decades now. And again, that's just another part of it. You know, women talk about their emotions and express their emotions almost all the time, right? But I don't think that's a great approach for men. Like I said, it's not suppress them all the time. This is not suppression. This is overcoming. This is being able to control. And when you do that and you get good at that, you definitely get good at knowing when to express them. And of course, sometimes too much is too much, guys. Like I mentioned before in the beginning of the video, there were times during those first few months where too much was too much, right? I just had to hold my hands up and say, I can't do this right now. I can't be strong in this moment. You know, I would break down, I would cry, or I say, look, I can't help you right now, to my wife, etc. But most of the time, I had to be strong. I had to be stable. I had to face this huge challenge, which is a huge challenge. Having a kid in the best of times, you know, for the first time around, is a huge challenge. But when you go through, your child has these health problems, you know, and multiple issues at the beginning, and it's so difficult. You know, you're already full of hormones and emotions, and then you go through all of that, and it's just next level. But for me, when I came out of that, the other end, and I know that I'd done a great job there, and I knew I had stayed solid, you know, here, and stayed grounded, and you know, I was the rock for my wife there. I came out of that with a huge sense of pride and accomplishment, and I felt like I got through that. That was the worst time in my life up to now. You know, fingers crossed it doesn't get worse than that. I felt like, okay, I got through this, we got through it now, times are better now. I was really proud of myself, and I felt like I could really get through almost anything else as well, you know. Whereas if I had just been this huge mess, always expressed myself, we would have just been a mess of a family, and I don't know if we would have made it through as a family, because it was there were some really dark times and really hard conversations that we had to have, and with emotional, if I was an emotional wreck, I don't know where we would have ended up. So I really believe that stoicism and that stoic approach helped me. I've tried to maintain that in my everyday life as much as possible. I come back to stoicism, I read things and try and learn more about it. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on stoicism whatsoever, but you should definitely, guys, especially as men today, you know, we're being bombarded with all types of propaganda and feminization, being told we should be really in touch with our emotions and always express it, etc. And I don't necessarily think that's always should be the case. And I think Stoicism is a great tool for all men of all ages, and great for fathers especially, because listen, fatherhood it's hard, it's challenging, and it's just helped me massively. It's helped me with the family dynamics and my marriage, etc. And I highly recommend it. So, start there. Go to the best. Marcus Aurelius. Go to Seneca. Go to all of those, all the best. Right? There's loads of good books on it. You do just a quick Google search, you'll learn all about it. But it really helped me. And I'll talk more about it, and I'll tell you more about how I've applied it more into my life. But I wanted you guys to know, that it helped me in my darkest times. Being that rock for my family, being that stoic rock for my family was, it saved us. It absolutely saved us. So, yeah, guys, if you come to the end of the video again, if anyone's watching this, I'd love to read your comments. I'll get back to you. And also, if you could like and subscribe, that would be brilliant. Look forward to talking to you guys in the next video.